Welcome to SquadTalks over coffee. We are talking about marketing campaigns today and sales campaigns, what they are, the process, and our top recommendations on them.
That's right.
Hi, I'm Malia Peterson. I am the VP of Strategic Marketing here at the Squad, and I am with our special guest, Alex Seibert, first-time guest.
Thank you.
And she's a Director of Partner Marketing here. Tell us just a little about what you do since you're new to the show.
Yeah. So I'm a Director of Partner Marketing. I have 5 clients that I get to be a part of their team, and I absolutely love it. This is a dream job for me. But mostly I work on campaigns. I work on putting together social things. I help with big strategic ideas, but then I also can get in the nitty-gritty if I need to and do reporting, some presentations, some writing, a little bit of everything. So every day is different. Every task is different. Every client is different, and it's wonderful. I love it.
Yeah, and that is something very unique about us. I feel like about the marketing squad is basically Alex and her role. She, like she said, she's as if she's a team member for 5 different businesses, outsourced. But a lot of times you're even hand in hand, side by side with them. Sometimes you're at their office occasionally for some of them, and that is just a unique way that we try to serve clients who look to us for outsourced support, but we still want to be aligned and ingrained with them. And I do think it's really cool. Like you said, it's very interesting. Every day is different, but it's also cool to get to be a part of really cool stories and brands and all that. And I feel like you do a great job at it.
Thank you. I love it.
So speaking of that, we are going to get into really what it means to plan, manage all of that for a campaign for a business like one of your team members, one of your clients. But first, I do want to ask, what's in your coffee cup?
This is Keurig coffee. Whatever was in the thing. I didn't even pick a fancy mug. I know Bryce will be so ashamed to say Bryce.
It's on brand though.
Yeah, it's a very clean slate right here. This is classic, classic white.
I like
That's my jam.
Yeah.
Keurig. I haven't figured out the bean grinder yet.
I never mess with that either, actually. But I miss our,
one day.
espresso and all that. But
I'm not particular. I wish I was, but my palate is not that sophisticated. So.
And we are kind of in a new little spot for our filming, and so hopefully there'll be a few little things that pop up in our next couple episodes that you're like, oh, that's an Easter egg, or that's a new piece of decoration. But but we also like the clean part of our brand. But I think it's interesting to ask what's in the cup, because usually we only talk about like the mug that represents a local place. That's what we've done, at least in some previous ones. But we are totally off that today, and we're just talking about what's inside, because that's what matters. And I'm an iced coffee person, and I do have an espresso machine at home, so that's what
the bloggers I follow,
me.
they have an espresso, and it looks awesome. But like I said, I don't think my palate's ready for that. Like Keurig works for me, gets the job done. It's delicious. It's cool.
I hear you.
Yeah.
And coffee is what powers us.
Yeah.
So I guess speaking of that, you are here today again to talk about something I think you're very good at.
Thank you.
And it's just all about campaigns, marketing, sales and marketing campaigns. I think a great place to start for anyone, especially with this topic, is like, what is it? Let's define it, because there's a lot of different people that have different opinions on it. So
I think like the first thing to know is that it's not only ads. Like in my mind, based on where I sort of came from, everything, a campaign meant ad spend, lots of money. And when you put money behind something, it automatically like amplifies how important it is, I think. But I think a campaign can be anything. Like if you have a consistent message, or you have something you want to tell the world, don't just put it out in one place. Like think about a way strategically to put it out in a lot of places so that a lot of people can hear it in a lot of different platforms. And so it's saying the same thing 50,000 times. And it seems like a lot, but really you never know when you're going to catch somebody. And even if somebody sees it in one platform and then sees it again 2 or 3 other times, they're gonna see it in a different light, a different time of day. They might pay more attention or less attention, and I think like having that consistency is so good. I think that's what makes a really good campaign is just being able to put it out there in multiple places.
People struggle to pay attention anyway, I feel like,
Yes,
and that's
yes.
why we encourage ourselves and our clients of like, don't be afraid to say it 15,000
Yes,
times.
yes.
That's the only way it's going to really make a difference. And I didn't think about this when we were talking that earlier, that HubSpot, which is a tool and a mindset, a company we really align with at the Squad, they just recently were talking about this online, and that a campaign, they define it as, it's opposite of maybe your ongoing strategy for the year as a company. Campaign as a very focused outcome goal and multiple assets, multiple channels working together to push it out there, like you said. And so I think that like the goal part, and then just like you said, streamlining multiple assets, multiple channels working together to try to accomplish that same message, that same goal. So in your opinion though, how would you define when something is just, content out there like on social media versus it's the next level, it's worthy of a campaign?
I think if you have a clear goal that sort of aligns with sales, then I think that's something
good.
that needs to be like well thought out. And in my experience, a lot of people want to sell this, and they want to sell that, and they want to sell that, and they want to just like word vomit all over people. But whenever you meet somebody and talk to them, you don't walk up to them and just say, "Hey, I do sales and marketing and blah blah blah." Like I don't list all the things that I do. I ask you, like, where are you at? Where are you at today? What do you need? Like,
It's very focused.
yeah. And so I think like if you have a goal in mind, a very specific goal, then think about that nugget and build messaging around that. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So what would be some of your top tips for people to execute a very effective campaign?
I think it all starts with a really good plan. So many times I've seen people get really spend a lot of time in the change this word, change this image, change this, this isn't perfect.
Like while they're in the middle of executing it.
Yeah. The very, very like minutia details, you know what I mean? But I think that if you have a well thought out plan that you take 5 steps up and you say, okay, overall, I want this to be my outcome, and I have these resources, and I want to send this message, and then sort of put that together in a plan, put some dates to it, because that's important, especially if you're working with like a partner, like an agency partner, and have some like realistic deadlines.
Yeah.
But I think planning by far, I've seen it. I've seen both sides where we planned really well and where we didn't really plan very well, and all the time the plan works way better.
So maybe take me into that process a little bit. Like the first one is planning. What are some tips for that phase? Like what are you doing in that part?
I think the number one thing you have to do is have a goal. Like you can't just say, hey, I want to have a campaign so that people know my brand, or people people know who I am and then they call me immediately.
Yeah,
like that's
too generic or general.
That's very broad. I think there's a time and a place for branding, and that's sort of a special other like nugget, but that doesn't have a very specific goal usually.
And back to that definition by HubSpot, that would actually be probably more part of your overall strategy. You're always working on that all year.
I read a stat the other day that said, or somebody on a podcast said, for every 85 cents you spend on a campaign or a very specific goal selling, 15 cents is spent on branding, and you don't sell it all. It's just like who you are and what you do, and you don't sell it all. This is
That's
who,
cool.
this is
I
who
like
you
that.
are.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to start using that going forward and see if there's some like validity to that. But where were we at? Oh, tips for getting started. And I was going into goals.
Yeah.
So setting a very specific like sales related or some sort of like qualifier related or content related, like some very specific goal. They download something, you want them to download something, you want them to call, you want them to request something,
like
you
a
want
quote
them
or
to buy
content.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of our people are, a lot of our clients are B2B, so it's more like requesting a quote or like downloading content and sort of learning, because they're usually like bigger purchases, longer term contracts, that kind of thing. So I think having a very specific goal, but then also how are you going to measure that? And you don't always have to know the how. Like, there's a lot of technical, cool things that people can do. There's some things we can't do, but there are a lot of things that we can do that will let you know how you're tracking towards those goals. If you don't have that, then you're kind of throwing money into the wind and hoping that it works. But the tracking of the goals is a big deal. I think that's number one where you start.
Yeah. So then if we're moving from planning into actual launch, and then after launch it's just running, what are some things that should be happening then in those steps?
I think at the beginning, you know, when you're planning, you have to have some sort of like plan for some sort of date to monitor and pivot. Especially with ads, you always have some sort of like AI learning time, but you never just want to like set it and forget it. It's
not a crock pot.
No, it's not. But so you have to have some sort of like check-in time. So I think after you launch a campaign, you say, okay, here's all the things I'm doing. Here it is, world. I put it out on 5 platforms. Then what's next? You know, next week I'm putting it out on 8 other platforms, or I'm changing the message a little bit and putting it out in the same. But then I think you have to give it a little bit of time, and then you check in. So if that's 2 weeks later, if it's a month later, you sort of check in on your goals. How's it going? And then if you need to pivot, then you do that for the rest of the campaign. I think most campaigns don't. Kind of depends on what it is, but if it's like a sales-oriented goal or some big, hairy, scary thing, then I mean, you're not talking 2 weeks. You're talking like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, like an extended amount of time. So it gives you some time to sort of change it up and learn from the first 2 weeks or the first 4 weeks or the first 30 days, whatever the timeline is that you set, like in the planning stage.
Yeah. And I think it's important, especially for people who like businesses that may not spend a lot of time on analytics, or even just they get overwhelmed by data. You don't have to look at everything. Actually, it can be very distracting. But what's funny about what you said about tracking, like whether it's a request for quote or like how many people were on the page. Sometimes you forget to monitor your baseline first. Like before this campaign started, what did we look like then? How many quotes were we getting pre-campaign? Or what was the engagement rate of the traffic like before that? And then where do we want to be? And then that middle point, like you said, as it's been running, where are we by then? Are we getting close? Are we improved at all? And so that baseline's super important in my opinion, that some people sort of forget. And then, sometimes you're right that they just care about where they end up, but there's a lot of middle points that can hold you accountable, you know? So.
Well, and I think like speaking of analytics, I think it's bad. This may be just me, but I think it's bad practice to want to analyze everything. You have to be very specific. It will get very complicated very, very fast if you want to know every click on every page and every you will never go anywhere because you're analyzing the data all day. And there are people that can do that, and maybe in some instances like that works, but for me, everything that we've ever done, like I like to keep it very simple. Like, here's the goal, one goal, and here's how we're tracking it. Maybe three stats, 5 stats. I mean, you know, something like manageable that you can check in every day, every week, not every day, every week, and just like monitor. If you're tracking 30 goals over the whole campaign, like. What do they call it?
Analysis paralysis.
Yes, yes. And I've been there. Like, I can get stuck in analytics and just, like, go deep. And I think that's not really, like, if you zoom way back out, that's not really going to help you. What's going to help you is, like small goals. Let's test this. Let's test this. Let's test this. Pivot, you know, like, just small increments. And then once you get it refined, then you can sort of make it like an ongoing thing where you set it and forget it after you've tested it and seen it work.
Yeah. I feel like we need to have a follow-up episode just about maybe wrapping up a campaign or analytics because, and funny enough, you are working on a rock or a big goal for our company of just improving analytics in general. But like you just said, like I think hopefully the data is not wrong. If something breaks, the data could be wrong. But likely the data is right. It's the analyzing of it that we get wrong because it's not always straightforward. There could be multiple factors for one small change. And so if you overanalyze a small data point instead of seeing how multiple data points impact a picture or a trend, like you said, a more higher level view, that's the better way to analyze. Because a different data point can move for multiple reasons and they can domino affect each other. And so I think it's better to definitely look at big picture and remember your why, your purpose. So so for wrapping up a campaign, I guess just you know, what would be some examples of wins or even campaigns you've been a part of that you were like, this went really well, or ones you've seen by national brands? You know, I guess just like paint a picture of a great campaign.
I think simple goals that are measurable, trackable, that are executed with a plan, and that have provide a chance to learn, fix, or learn, improve, and move on. Like learn, improve, keep testing, learn, improve. That sort of quick improvement thing. It might take you several months or 6 months to get to a really solid, you know, effective campaign that satisfies one goal. But in the long run, then you can sort of let that run and check in with it, you know, in a shorter amount of time. But I think that a great campaign, at the end of the day, meets your goals. But I also think a win for a campaign is, even if you don't meet your goals, that you learn something. So at the end of every campaign, what I try to do is step back and say, okay, even if I didn't meet, you know, we wanted 10 RFQs and we got 5. What I learned was they didn't go to this page because they went to this page and they're more interested in blah, blah, blah. So maybe we should test this. And so, like, one can of worms opens a whole other...
It's like a scientist. You're like, ooh, another experiment coming
so,
up.
like, so many experiments. In a previous life, you know, I was managing multi-million-dollar digital budgets, and I got to see, like, one of the top digital agencies work on our brand. And the way that they started small, very specific, and worked really quickly. Every week it was, okay, we're testing this one thing every week. They didn't change a whole landing page. They didn't change, they literally changed like the color of a button or the name on a...
Truly an experiment. I like
yes, it was very much experiment style. And it was like every week we pivot small. But at the end of 90 days, we had a completely different landing page and a completely different campaign, and everything started to like fall into place. But so I always like to look to them. I follow a few other like thought leaders in the space that I like. I like the way they think about things. They a lot of times think bigger picture, higher strategy, but then like don't get in the details too much. So I try to keep up with them, and they've sort of all shaped my thoughts on campaigns nowadays.
That's a good point too, of like a lot of times I think with a with any kind of marketing action, you don't always have to recreate the wheel. Hopefully we can learn, like you said, from previous campaigns in a company's history. We can learn from thought leaders, but we also hope that our clients will trust us and trust our process, that like you just said about that national company, like we want to give it time, like a pathway of learning. And so I think that campaigns are teachable themselves. So like when we're talking the planning phase and the wrapping up, I don't think we have to recreate the wheel. We can look to people who've done it before us, or even like what we've learned already. I think that's really cool. So
I know I can totally I can nerd out.
I don't even know how long
I can nerd out on this. This is
Well, I do think that this is like, like I said to you before, I think that every single company, some businesses may say, we're not really going to do a lot on social. It just doesn't really fit maybe our B2B audience. Or we're not going to do a lot of I don't know, video or long form. We're much more straight to the point in how we, but every company, no matter which channels they choose to be on, does a campaign, whether they term it that or not. They have these types of initiatives, likely. And so I think it's really good to define it, and hopefully our clients can learn from this more, but also other businesses can like execute and connect with their team on a campaign better by these types of tips, because I think sometimes you just have to clarify. It gets there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of activity within one business that you do or could be doing.
Everybody wants to do all the things, but really like be really good at one thing for 3 months, and then add a second thing, and then add a third thing, like after those other things are really well done.
So I think 2.0 of this conversation is all about like the analyzing of the data and what we've learned. But so we'll definitely have you back again. But I do think one cool thing to challenge anybody that's been watching is if you have very specific questions about marketing campaigns, the process, the tips that we've said, we'd love for you to leave that in a comment on this video, whether you saw it on YouTube, Facebook, as a blog on our website. There's every one of those options has like a comment part or section. So or you can obviously come to our website and contact us through our forms. And we think that this type of topic is just all about your questions and your specific needs of what the campaign could be for you. So please, leave your feedback and questions.
Yeah. For sure.
So
we can get nerdy with you.
Thank you very much for chatting with us.
Yeah,
we love having you on the team.
Thank you.
You're coming up on your 1 year.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, 1 year.
I cannot believe it's been a year. Like literally, it does not feel like a year.
Really?
Can't believe it.
Like it's flown by. I mean,
flown by.
Okay, because I was gonna say like I feel like it could feel like both. Like you've probably already done 1 million campaigns in a short time.
Yes.
But you've also time flies.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, cheers to you.
Cheers.
1 year campaigns. You want me to bring the glitter cannon things?
Please.
Okay.
Just don't pop it in my face. Sorry, Taylor.
So leave questions. Continue to like, subscribe. Give us your feedback on these types of discussions. We'd love to hear it.